My husband disappeared after I went into labor, showed up a year later pretending to be a changed man, and tried to move back in. So I let him think he won me over while quietly destroying his life from the inside. My husband disappeared after I went into labor, showed up a year later, pretending to be a changed man and tried to move back in. So I let him think he won me over while quietly destroying his life from the inside. Me and my husband, Daniel, have been together for over 10 years. I'm now 31, and he's 37. And for a while, we weren't able to have kids. It was the one thing in our marriage that was missing because Daniel is so Daniel, so perfect. At first, anyway, he was the type of guy to write down all your favorite candies in his notes app just so he could always be ready to surprise you with them. The type of guy to squeeze your hand a little tighter during horror scenes at the movies. I loved him, truly. And giving birth to our twins, even though it was painstakingly awful, was beautiful. Because the whole time, I knew that we were going to have the most amazing family together, or so I thought. He told me he was a little grossed out by birth giving and asked if he could wait outside. That's cool. I would be too if I had a PP. You're the most amazing wife ever, he said. After promising that he'd come in the second our baby girls had popped out, well, fast forward to me lying in the hospital in the most vulnerable state of my life. Tears stained my face. My body ached. I smelled awful. I asked my mom to go find Daniel, and she came back empty-handed. I can't find him, she said, voice shaking. My entire body immediately started trembling, like my nervous system was screaming at me that something was very, very wrong, and that's when the nurse handed me a letter. My tears were wetting the paper so much that I couldn't even finish the whole thing. It felt like someone was vacuuming all the color from my heart. Daniel had left the state. He told me he wanted to give me the courtesy of waiting until after I gave birth so he could help with the pregnancy symptoms. He apologized for pushing me to have kids, but after realizing the weight of it all 2 months in, he realized being a dad wasn't for him. I showed mine and his mom, Grace, who was there with his granny, Isabella too, the letter, and that's how I introduced my 2 baby girls into this world. As they cried, I cried too, with the 2 strongest women I knew keeping us all together. For the first few weeks, we all lived in the same house. I was basically immobile from the physical and emotional pain, so I left everything to them, and they never once complained. It wasn't until 1 year in when we were celebrating the birthdays of my baby girls that I found myself smiling. It was genuine, the type of smile that makes your cheekbones hurt. Life really is sweet, I thought to myself as his grandma Isabella helped my baby girls blow out the candles. And it was at this moment, this exact moment, that we all heard a knock at the door. My eyes widened, and my mind immediately went to protective mom mode. Grace, his mom, insisted on getting it, so I let her, and when she opened the door, she screamed. It was Daniel. My face fell, and any trace of happiness immediately vanished. "What the actual F?" I whispered. Meanwhile, my daughters hid behind Grace. They didn't even know who he was. "I just want to talk. Please just hear me out," he said, staring at me with the big brown eyes I once adored. I threw up in my mouth a little, and Isabella, his grandma, mouthed, "I'll figure it out to me." So I left to lie down in the other room. The walls were pretty thick, so I could barely make out what they were saying. But as their voices escalated, things became clearer. I know I shouldn't have cared so much about her appearance, but I'm just a man, and my woman went from hot to fat overnight. Before I even had time to process what he had said, I heard a loud smacking sound followed by a male groan and complete silence. I knew Isabella had hit him, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me smile a little. But mostly, I was angry, so I stepped out and did what any rational 31-year-old woman would do in this situation. I kissed him, told him I loved him, that I'd gladly take him back, and he believed me, but I had a plan. You see, in all the nights of lying awake, I spent hours imagining what I'd do if the day came where he randomly showed up while we were still legally married, and he had a really good career. So I was going to destroy him, not just for me and not even just for Grace or Isabella, but for my baby girls too. "I love you, but we need to go slow," I told him after pulling away. "The girls can't just have you appearing in their lives overnight. It needs to be slow." He nodded eagerly like a puppy being offered treat. "Whatever you want, I'll do anything. You can start by leaving now," I said. "This is their birthday party. I'll call you tomorrow and we can figure out next steps." He left without argument. When I went back inside, Grace and Isabella were staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "What the hell was that?" Grace demanded. "That," I said, picking up one of my daughters who was reaching for me, "was the beginning of the end for Daniel. He wants back in? Fine. But he's going to regret ever walking out that door." Isabella's face broke into a slow smile. "You're planning something." "I am," I confirmed, "and I need your help." That night, after the girls were asleep, the 3 of us sat at my kitchen table plotting. Well, mostly me plotting while they occasionally reminded me not to commit actual crimes. The plan was simple. Make Daniel think he had a chance at reconciliation while I quietly prepared to take him for everything he was worth in a divorce, every penny of child support, alimony, half his retirement, the works. Was it calculating? Absolutely. Vindictive? You bet. But watching my daughter sleep that night, I knew they deserved better than a father who saw them as an inconvenience and their mother as someone who was hot until she gave birth to his children. The next morning, I called Daniel. Game on. I called Daniel the next morning while the girls were still sleeping. He picked up on the first ring like he'd been waiting by his phone all night. I kept my voice emotionless as I laid out my terms. He could start seeing the girls gradually. Supervised visits only, and we'd take things one step at a time. No rushing back into our lives. I understand completely, he said, sounding way too eager. I've changed. I promise. I want to be there for all of you. Yeah, right. I told him he could come over that weekend for an hour, and my mom would be there too. I wasn't about to let him be alone with me or the girls. I hung up and immediately felt queasy. Grace came in with coffee and saw my face. Having second thoughts? She asked. No, I replied, taking the mug, just wondering how long I can keep this act up without punching him. The next few days were a blur of preparation. I called a divorce lawyer, a shark named Melissa that my friend recommended. She listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally making notes. So you want to string him along while building a case? She asked finally. I nodded. Is that legal? Nothing illegal about reconciliation attempts failing, she said with a slight smile. Just don't put anything in writing that could be used against you later. No text about your plans, no emails, nothing. And start gathering financial documents as soon as possible. That night, Grace helped me search through our home office. We found old tax returns, investment statements, and passwords Daniel had written down. I took pictures of everything. Isabella watched the twins while we worked, occasionally bringing us snacks and moral support. Remember that time Daniel forgot our anniversary and tried to cover it up by saying he was planning a surprise for the weekend? I said, laughing bitterly as I sifted through papers. Grace snorted. And then panic booked that terrible hotel with a broken hot tub. Should have seen the red flags then, I muttered. The weekend arrived too quickly. I dressed the girls in matching outfits and tried to prepare them as best you can prepare one-year-olds for meeting their father. My mom arrived early, giving me a tight hug. You sure about this? She asked. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped into my throat. Showtime. Daniel stood there with a giant teddy bear in each arm and a nervous smile. I let him in, watching as he awkwardly placed the bears on the couch and looked around. The girls are in the playpen, I said, leading him to the living room. He approached slowly, kneeling down to their level. Hi there, he said softly. My daughter stared at him like he was a strange animal at the zoo. Lily started crying. Emma just chewed on her toy unimpressed. They don't know you, I said, stating the obvious. It's going to take time. The visit was painfully awkward. Daniel tried desperately to connect with the twins, but they wanted nothing to do with him. After about 40 minutes, I suggested he leave while they were calm. He looked disappointed but agreed. At the door, he reached for my hand. Thank you for this. I know I don't deserve it. At least he got that part right. I pulled my hand away after a moment, not wanting to overdo the act. We'll try again next week. After he left, my mom helped me put the girls down for their nap. He seems genuinely sorry, she observed. Mom, he left me in the hospital right after I gave birth. Sorry he doesn't cut it. I know, honey. Just making an observation. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. Daniel would visit for short periods, bringing expensive gifts I'd return later. He started sending even more money for the girls, which I documented and saved. After the fourth visit, he suggested we go to dinner, just the two of us. I think that's a good idea, I said, faking enthusiasm. My mom can watch the girls. We went to an upscale restaurant where Daniel ordered expensive wine and reached for my hand across the table. I let him take it, imagining the look on his face when this all came crashing down. I miss us, he said, stroking my palm. I know I messed up. I panicked. The whole dad thing. It terrified me. I nodded sympathetically while mentally calculating child support payments. It was a lot of change at once. And honestly, he lowered his voice. Seeing you in the hospital like that, it was hard. My blood boiled, but I kept my face neutral. Hard for you? Try pushing out two humans after 26 hours of labor. He backpedaled quickly. Of course, that's not what I meant. I wasn't ready to see you in pain. I wasn't ready for any of it. The conversation continued with Daniel doing most of the talking. He'd moved back to the area. He'd been doing well at work. He'd been reading parenting books. By dessert, I almost admired his audacity. Almost. When he dropped me off, he tried to kiss me goodbye. I turned my head so he caught my cheek instead. Baby steps, I said with a small smile. I'm not ready for that yet. He nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. As soon as he drove away, I scrubbed my face where his lips had touched. I called Grace immediately. "I deserve an Oscar for this performance," I told her, kicking off my heels. The next morning, I had a scheduled call with Melissa, the lawyer. She was pleased with my progress. "Keep gathering information," she advised. "The more evidence of his abandonment and your sole parenting, the better. And start documenting expenses, everything you've paid for that he hasn't contributed to." I spent the next week digging through emails, bank statements, and medical bills. The girls had their regular checkup, and I invited Daniel to come along. He seemed uncomfortable in the pediatrician's office, but made a show of asking questions and appearing involved. The doctor who knew our situation gave me a questioning look. I suddenly shook my head. After the appointment, Daniel suggested we all go for ice cream. It was the first time we'd been out as a family, and it felt weird. A couple at the next table smiled at us. "Your daughters are adorable," the woman said. "Thank you," Daniel proudly, as if he'd been there all along. "They're daddy's little princesses." I nearly choked on my ice cream. The audacity of this man. When we got home, I made an excuse about the girls needing naps and sent him on his way. That night, Isabella came over for dinner. I told her about Daniel's daddy's little princesses comment, and she nearly threw her fork across the room. "The nerve," she exclaimed. "That boy needs another smack upside the head." "Don't worry," I assured her. "What I'm planning will hurt way more than a smack." 2 months into our reconciliation, Daniel suggested he start staying over occasionally to help with night feedings and really bond with the girls, he explained. I panicked a bit, but realized this might actually help my case. I consulted with Melissa, who agreed. "Document everything," she reminded me. "Every time he sleeps through the crying, every diaper he refuses to change." So Daniel started staying over 1 night a week. He took the guest room, which I insisted on to take things slow. The first night, both girls woke up crying at 2 a.m. I waited to see what he would do. Nothing. I ended up handling it myself while he snored through the whole thing. In the morning, I casually mentioned it. "Rough night with the girls." "Oh, I didn't hear them," he said, sipping the coffee I'd made. "You should have woken me up." "Next time," I lied. But there was never a next time. Daniel slept through every nighttime wake-up, claimed to be on important work calls during messy diaper changes, and generally proved exactly what I already knew. He wasn't father material. One night, after he'd been staying over weekly for about a month, he tried to make a move. We were watching TV after the girls were asleep, and he slid closer to me on the couch, putting his arm around me. "I've missed this," he whispered, leaning in. Everything in me wanted to push him away, but I forced myself to stay in character. I let him kiss me briefly before pulling back. "It's still complicated," I said. "I'm not ready for more." He looked frustrated, but nodded. "I understand. I'll wait until you're ready." That night, I took the longest shower of my life trying to wash away the feeling of his lips on mine. I reminded myself it would all be worth it in the end. As the weeks passed, I noticed Daniel getting more comfortable and more presumptuous. He started leaving things at the house, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, then more clothes. He began referring to the girls as our daughters in public. He posted a picture of all 4 of us on his Instagram with the caption "Family Reunited." I nearly lost it when I saw that, but Melissa advised me to stay calm. "We're building a case," she reminded me. "Every overstepping move helps us." 3 months into our reconciliation, Daniel dropped a bombshell. We were having dinner at his apartment while my mom watched the girls. "I've been thinking," he said, refilling my wine glass, "we should move back in together officially." I nearly spit out my drink. "That's a big step. We're married," he pointed out, "and I want to be there for all of you full time." I took a sip of wine to buy myself time. This wasn't part of the plan, at least not this soon, but maybe it could work in my favor. "Let me think about it," I said finally. "It's not just about us. The girls have a routine." He nodded eagerly. "Of course, take all the time you need." I called an emergency meeting with Grace, Isabella, and my mom the next day. We sat around my kitchen table while the girls napped. "He wants to move back in," I announced. Isabella cursed in Spanish. My mom looked worried. Grace just shook her head. "What did Melissa say?" Grace asked. "I haven't told her yet. I wanted to talk to you all first." We debated the pros and cons. On one hand, having Daniel around full-time would be emotionally exhausting. On the other, it would give me even more evidence of his minimal parenting. "I don't like it," my mom said finally. "Having him in your space every day, that's a lot to handle." "I don't like it either," I admitted, "but I keep thinking about the end game." In the end, we compromised. I told Daniel he could stay over more frequently, but keep his apartment for now. "Just until we're sure this is working," I explained. He wasn't thrilled, but agreed. That's when phase 2 of my plan kicked in. With Melissa's guidance, I started coincidentally leaving financial documents where Daniel could see them, medical bills, childcare costs, the mortgage statement showing I'd been making payments alone. I also made sure he noticed how much work caring for twins actually was. No more conveniently handling everything behind the scenes. If a diaper needed changing when he was around, I'd ask him to do it. When the girls were fussy, I'd hand them to him. Most times, he'd help briefly before finding an excuse to step away. One night, after a particularly challenging evening with both girls teething, I found Daniel scrolling on his phone while I rocked Lily. "Can you take her?" I asked. "My arm's aching. I need to check on Emma." "In a minute," he replied, not looking up. "Just finishing this email." 5 minutes later, he was still on his phone. I cleared my throat loudly. "Sorry. Work emergency," he muttered. Still typing. I took a mental snapshot of the moment and added it to my growing file of evidence. The next day, I reported everything to Melissa. "This is all excellent," she said, "but we need more financial information. Joint accounts, investments, his retirement plan." Getting that information proved trickier. Daniel kept his laptop password protected and rarely left financial statements lying around, but then an opportunity presented itself. Daniel mentioned he needed to update his beneficiaries on his 401k to include the girls. He logged into his account one evening while I was cleaning up after dinner. I casually walked by, drying a plate, and glimpsed his password as he typed it. The next day, while he was at work and the girls were with Grace, I logged into his accounts. I found everything. His real salary, higher than he'd told me, stock options, a cryptocurrency account with substantial holdings, and a separate savings account I never knew about. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Melissa. She called me immediately. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "When are you thinking of filing?" I looked at the calendar. "Give me one more month. I want to be completely ready." That month was the hardest. Daniel was staying over 4 nights a week. He'd started talking about our future and even mentioned having another baby someday. Each time he brought it up, I'd smile and nod while mentally adding it to my evidence file. Grace noticed the toll it was taking. "You look exhausted," she said during one of her visits, "and not just new mom exhausted." "I'm fine," I insisted. "Just ready for this to be over." "You don't have to go through with it, you know," she said gently. "You could just file for divorce now." I shook my head. After what he did? How he left? No. He deserves this. The breaking point came unexpectedly. Daniel was supposed to watch the girls while I went to a doctor's appointment. I came home early to find them crying in their playpen while he was on a video call in the kitchen, headphones on, completely oblivious. I saw red. I picked up both girls, comforting them while glaring at Daniel. He finally noticed me and quickly ended his call. "They just started crying," he claimed. "I was about to check on them." "Sure you were." I didn't say anything. Just took the girls to their room to change them and calm them down. When I came back out, Daniel was acting like nothing had happened, asking what I wanted for dinner. That night, I called Melissa. "I'm ready," I told her. "Let's file." She had the paperwork prepared within days. We just needed to decide how to serve him. I wanted maximum impact. "His company is having a team dinner next Friday," I mentioned. "He's been talking about it all week." Melissa smiled. "Perfect." The week leading up to Friday, I played my part perfectly. I was affectionate with Daniel, made his favorite meals, and even suggested we look at houses with bigger yards for the family. He was completely blindsided. Friday evening, Daniel got dressed up for his team dinner. He kissed me goodbye, promised not to be late, and headed out the door. 2 hours later, I got a text from the process server confirming delivery. Then my phone exploded with calls and texts from Daniel. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent a single text. "Please direct all communication through my attorney." Then I blocked his number. Grace and Isabella came over that night with wine and takeout to celebrate. We put the girls to bed early and had an impromptu party in my living room. To freedom, Grace hosted raising her glass. "And justice," added Isabella. I should have felt relieved, but mostly I felt tired. The months of pretending had drained me, but at least the worst was over, or so I thought. The next morning, I opened my front door to find Daniel sleeping in his car in my driveway. When he saw me, he jumped out and rushed toward me. "We need to talk," he demanded, looking disheveled. "What the hell is this divorce thing?" After everything, I stepped back inside and started to close the door. "Like I said, talk to my lawyer." He stuck his foot in the doorway. "You can't do this to me," he hissed. I came back. I tried. "You led me on." Something in me snapped. "Led you on? You abandoned me and your newborn daughters. You left me in the hospital. And you think you're the victim?" I pushed against the door hard enough that he had to move his foot or risk injury. Then I slammed it shut and locked it, my heart racing. Through the peephole, I watched him pound on the door for a few minutes before finally giving up and leaving. I called Melissa immediately to report what happened. She advised me to document everything and consider getting a restraining order if his behavior escalated. Daniel tried everything over the next week. He sent flowers. He emailed long apologies. He even got his mother to call me, though Grace had already warned her what was happening, so that backfired on him. When none of that worked, he switched tactics. I received a letter from his attorney claiming I had fraudulently misrepresented my intentions during our reconciliation period. I forwarded it to Melissa, who laughed it off. "Let him try to prove that in court," she said confidently. "Meanwhile, we have documented abandonment, minimal childcare participation, and financial concealment." The divorce proceedings turned ugly fast. Daniel contested everything: custody, support amounts, property division. He claimed I'd tricked him into reconciliation just to get more money. His lawyer painted me as a calculating gold digger who had manipulated a remorseful husband, but Melissa was better. She presented evidence of Daniel's absence during the girls' first year, his minimal involvement in their care even during reconciliation, and most damning, his own words about abandoning us because he wasn't ready to be a dad. She even had affidavits from the hospital staff about his disappearance during the birth. The judge wasn't impressed with Daniel's claims. 4 months of contentious legal battles ended with a ruling largely in my favor: primary physical custody with generous child support, half of all marital assets, including those accounts he'd hidden, and alimony for 3 years to help me get back on my feet career-wise. Daniel was furious. I could see it in his eyes when the judgment was announced. He stormed out of the courtroom without looking at me. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders for the first time in almost 2 years. That night, surrounded by Grace, Isabella, my mom, and my beautiful daughters, I finally allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from relief. It was over. We had won. "To new beginnings," my mom said, raising her glass. I looked at my daughters playing on the floor, oblivious to the drama that had surrounded their young lives, and smiled. To new beginnings, but life is never that neat and tidy. 3 days after the divorce was finalized, I came home from grocery shopping to find my front door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I called out, but no one answered. I cautiously pushed the door open, relieved that the girls were with Grace for the afternoon. The house had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. My laptop was gone along with some jewelry and the girls' baby books. I called the police immediately, my hands shaking as I gave them the details. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" the officer asked as he took notes. I had a very good idea, but I needed to be careful. "My ex-husband and I just finalized a contentious divorce," I said. He wasn't happy with the outcome. "They took fingerprints and filed a report, but warned me that home invasions were common and not always solved." I spent the night at Grace's house, too shaken to stay alone. The next day, I had locks changed and a security system installed. I wasn't taking any chances. When I returned to the house to clean up, I discovered something odd. Among the scattered papers were printouts of emails between me and Melissa discussing our strategy, emails that had only been on my now stolen laptop. This wasn't a random break-in. This was Daniel looking for leverage. I called Melissa immediately. She was concerned but not surprised. "This changes things," she said firmly. "We need to file a police report specifically naming Daniel as your suspect." I hesitated, "But I don't have actual proof it was him." "The emails are pretty damning evidence," she replied. "And with the timing of the break-in right after the divorce, come on." She was right. I went to the police station that afternoon and filed an additional report specifically mentioning the emails and my suspicions about Daniel. The officer took it seriously, but warned me they'd need more than circumstantial evidence to charge him. I went back to Grace's house feeling uneasy. The girls were napping, blissfully unaware of the chaos. Grace handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me. "You know what's weird?" I said, staring into my mug. "The baby books. Why would someone steal those in a random break-in?" Grace's expression darkened. "Because they weren't random. That was Daniel trying to hurt you. He knows how much those books mean to you." I felt sick. I'd spent countless nights documenting every first smile, first tooth, first steps. Those books were irreplaceable. For the next week, I stayed at Grace's while my security system was being installed. I jumped at every noise and checked my phone constantly for updates from the police. Nothing. Then I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Found something that belongs to you. Meet me at Westside Park. 2 p.m. Come alone." I showed Grace and Isabella, who both immediately said, "Don't go. It's obviously a trap," Isabella added, her eyes narrowing. "But what if it was about my laptop or the baby books?" I couldn't just ignore it. "What if I don't go alone? What if we all go and you two stay in the car watching?" They reluctantly agreed to my compromise. At 1:45, we pulled into the parking lot. I spotted Daniel's car immediately and felt my stomach knot. "That's his car." I told them, "Stay here. If I'm not back in 15 minutes, call the police." Walking across that park was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Daniel was sitting on a bench, a backpack beside him. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, not getting up. "Where are my things?" I demanded, staying a safe distance away. "What things?" he asked innocently. "I just wanted to talk without lawyers." I turned to walk away. "I'm not playing games, Daniel." "Wait," he called, reaching into the backpack. He pulled out one of the baby books. "Looking for these?" My blood boiled. "You broke into my house? You stole from me and the girls?" He shrugged. "Technically, they're my daughters too. I wanted some memories." "You weren't there for those memories," I shot back. "You have no right to those books." "I have every right," he snapped, suddenly angry. "You manipulated me, pretended we were reconciling while plotting against me the whole time." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, that's rich coming from you. You abandoned us when we needed you most because what? I wasn't hot anymore?" He flinched. "I made a mistake. I tried to fix it." "No. You tried to erase it. You wanted to pretend it never happened." I stepped closer, finding courage in my anger. "Give me back my things, Daniel. All of them." He clutched the book tighter. "Or what? Or I press charges for breaking and entering." "I'll call the police right now." He stared at me, trying to gauge if I was bluffing. I held his gaze steadily. "Try me." We stared at each other for a long moment before he finally sighed and handed over the book. "The rest is in my car." I followed him to his car, keeping a safe distance. Grace and Isabella were watching intently from our vehicle. Daniel opened his trunk and pulled out a box containing my laptop and the other baby book. No jewelry, but I didn't care about that. "Is that everything?" I asked coldly. He nodded, then hesitated. "I never meant for things to go this far." "Which part?" "Abandoning us? Breaking into my house? Stealing our children's memories? All of it," he admitted quietly. "I panicked when you had the babies. Seeing you like that, I couldn't handle it. Then when I came back, I really thought we could fix things." For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered those weeks in the hospital, alone with newborns, crying myself to sleep. "You don't get to fix abandonment, Daniel. Actions have consequences." He looked defeated. "So what now?" "Now you stick to the custody agreement. You show up for your scheduled visitations. You be a father to your daughters, not because of me, but because they deserve it." He nodded slowly. "I want that too." "Then prove it," I said, taking the box from him, "and stay away from my house." I walked back to Grace's car with my recovered treasures, feeling oddly calm. I'd faced Daniel without breaking down or giving in, and it felt empowering. "What happened?" Grace demanded as I got in. "I got my stuff back," I said simply, and maybe gave Daniel something to think about. The next few weeks were surprisingly quiet. Daniel made no attempt to contact me outside of arrangements for his visitation. He actually showed up for his scheduled time with the girls, bringing appropriate toys and snacks. The first few handoffs were tense, but we kept it civil for the girls' sake. 3 months passed. The girls were growing so fast, developing their own little personalities. Lily was bold and adventurous, while Emma was thoughtful and cautious. They had started saying more words, including Dada, when Daniel came for visits. It was bittersweet to hear, but I reminded myself that this wasn't about me or my feelings toward Daniel. This was about them. One Saturday morning, Daniel arrived to pick up the girls for his visitation looking nervous. "Can we talk for a minute?" he asked after the girls were secured in his car. I crossed my arms. "About what?" "I got offered a job in Chicago. It's a big promotion," he said, looking conflicted. My heart sank. After all this, was he leaving again? "But I turned it down," he continued. "I'm not leaving the girls again. I've already missed too much of their lives." I was genuinely surprised. "That's good, Daniel. They need consistency." He nodded. "I know that now. I'm also starting therapy for real this time." He paused. "I'm not telling you this to get back together or anything. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better for them." For the first time since that day in the hospital, I felt like Daniel might actually be growing up. "Thank you for telling me." After he left with the girls, I sat on my porch steps thinking about how much had changed in 2 years. I wasn't the same person who had once adored Daniel unconditionally. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more cautious, but also more compassionate. I had learned to stand up for myself and my daughters even when it meant making difficult choices. The next week, I decided it was time for a fresh start. I'd been living in the house Daniel and I bought together, surrounded by memories of our failed marriage. With my settlement money, I could afford to move somewhere new, somewhere without ghosts. I found a lovely 3-bedroom house with a big backyard, perfect for the girls to play in. It was closer to Grace and Isabella too, which was a bonus. Moving day arrived, and to my surprise, Daniel offered to help. "You don't have to," I told him when he showed up in jeans and an old t-shirt. "I want to," he insisted. "Consider it part of my amends." We spent the day moving boxes and furniture, keeping interactions brief but civil. By evening, the big items were in place, and the girls were exploring their new bedrooms with excitement. As Daniel prepared to leave, he handed me an envelope. "This is for you. Don't open it until I'm gone, please." After he left, I sat on my new porch swing and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and several pages of official-looking documents. The letter was simple. "I know this doesn't fix what I did, but I hope it helps. The house is completely yours now. I've signed over my half. No strings attached. The girls deserve stability, and you deserve peace. Daniel." I flipped through the paperwork. He had indeed transferred his ownership of our old house to me. It was a significant financial gift that would give me additional security for the girls' future. That night, after putting the twins to bed in their new room, I called Grace to tell her about Daniel's gesture. "Do you think he's really changed?" she asked skeptically. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "And frankly, it doesn't matter. What matters is that he's showing up for the girls consistently now." Over the next few months, co-parenting with Daniel became almost normal. He never missed a visitation. He attended their doctor appointments. He even volunteered to take them an extra day when I caught the flu. It wasn't perfect. He still sometimes looked overwhelmed by twin toddlers, but he was trying. 6 months after we moved, the girls turned 2. We decided to have a small party at my new house. Daniel would come along with Grace, Isabella, my mom, and a few friends. I was nervous about hosting my ex for a social event, but it felt important for the girls. The party went surprisingly well. The girls were delighted by the attention and cake. Daniel kept a respectful distance from me, but interacted warmly with everyone else. I caught Grace giving him cooking tips and had to smile at how far we'd all come. After everyone left, I was cleaning up when I found a small gift bag tucked behind the presents table. The tag said "for Mom" in Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal and a note. "Thought you might need a new one for their next chapter. Thank you for being an amazing mother to our girls." I felt a complex mix of emotions, gratitude, sadness for what might have been, but mostly peace. Daniel and I would never be what we once were to each other, but maybe we could be decent co-parents. Maybe that was enough. As the twins' second birthday party faded into memory, life settled into a new rhythm. I returned to work full-time, finding a job that allowed me partial remote work. Daniel maintained his visitation schedule faithfully. Grace and Isabella remained my strongest supporters, dropping by regularly with home-cooked meals and grandmotherly advice. One evening, as I watched my girls playing in our backyard, I realized something important. We had survived the worst and come out stronger. I had faced abandonment, betrayal, and heartbreak, yet here I was building a beautiful life for my daughters. The journey hadn't been what I expected when I married Daniel all those years ago. There was no perfect husband, no fairy tale ending. Instead, there were 2 amazing little girls, a tribe of fierce women who had my back, and yes, even a father who was finally stepping up. It wasn't the family I had imagined, but it was ours. And looking at my daughters' smiling faces, I knew without a doubt that it was enough.